The old house stood on a hill overlooking the town, its darkened windows like vacant eyes staring out at nothing. Everyone in Oakhaven knew about the Blackwood Manor, and everyone had a story, a hushed whisper of unexplained lights, strange music, or the chilling cries that sometimes drifted down from the hill on moonless nights. I, however, was about to have my own story. It all started with a dare, as most foolish decisions do. My friends, a group of self-proclaimed thrill-seekers, had egged me on. "Just one night, Mark," Liam had said, a smirk playing on his lips. "Prove you're not a chicken." I was never one to back down from a challenge, especially not one that questioned my bravery. So, armed with a flashlight, a cheap digital camera, and a healthy dose of youthful bravado, I found myself standing before the imposing raw, iron gates of Blackwood Manor at the stroke of midnight. The air was heavy, still, and unnaturally cold, even for an autumn night. The gates, rusted and creaking, groaned open with a sound like a dying animal. I stepped onto the overgrown path, the crunch of dead leaves under my boots echoing in the oppressive silence. The house loomed larger with every step, its silhouette a jagged tear against the backdrop of a sickly pale moon. The front door, a heavy oak monstrosity, was unlocked. It swung inward with an agonizingly slow groan, revealing a gaping maw of darkness. A thick, musty odor, a mix of dust, decay, and something else, something faintly metallic and sickly sweet, assaulted my senses. I swallowed hard, the bravado beginning to chip away, replaced by a cold knot of dread in my stomach. My flashlight beam cut through the inky blackness, dancing across faded wallpaper, dust-shrouded furniture draped in white sheets like skeletal ghosts, and a grand staircase that spiraled into the unknown depths of the upper floor. Each creak of the house, each whisper of the wind outside, seemed amplified, turning into monstrous growls and phantom footsteps. I started in the living room, my camera clicking away, capturing images of decaying. A grand piano sat in one corner, its keys yellowed and chipped. I hesitantly ran my fingers over them, a silent, discordant chord echoing in the vast room. The sound seemed to hang in the air, refusing to dissipate. Moving into the dining room, I found a long, polished table, still set with tarnished silver and delicate china, as if awaiting a dinner party that would never arrive. A faint chill, colder than the surrounding air, emanated from the head of the table. I shone my light there, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. Yet, the feeling of an unseen presence was palpable, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. I decided to venture upstairs. Each step on the creaking wooden stairs was a conscious effort, my heart hammering against my ribs. The upper landing was a mirror image of the downstairs, with more shrouded furniture and a long hallway stretching into the darkness. I tried the first door on the left. It was a bedroom, surprisingly intact. A four-poster bed stood in the center, its canopy tattered and torn. On a bedside table, a porcelain doll sat propped up, its painted eyes staring blankly ahead. I felt an irrational urge to turn it away, to break its unnerving gaze, but I resisted. As I turned to leave, a faint whisper brushed past my ear, so close I could almost feel a breath. "Get out." I froze, every muscle in my body tightening. He spun around, sweeping my flashlight frantically across the room. Nothing. The doll remained perfectly still. My mind raced, trying to rationalize it as the wind, or my own overactive imagination. But the whisper had been too clear, too distinct. I stumbled out of the room, my breath catching in my throat. I told myself it was just the isolation, the dark, playing tricks on my mind. I needed to finish this, to get my pictures, and get out. The next room was a study, filled with towering bookshelves overflowing with moldering tomes. A heavy mahogany desk dominated the room, and on its surface, a single, leather-bound journal lay open. Curiosity, stronger than my fear, compelled me to approach it. The journal was old, its pages yellowed and brittle. The handwriting was elegant, looping script, but the words themselves were chilling. It was a diary, detailing the slow descent into madness of a former occupant, a woman named Eleanor Blackwood. She wrote of whispers in the walls, shadows that moved on their own, and the constant feeling of being watched. Her entries became increasingly erratic, culminating in a final, scrawled sentence. "They are here. They want me." As I read the last words, a sudden, piercing shriek tore through the silence of the house. It wasn't human, not entirely. It was a blend of anguish and pure, unadulterated terror, echoing from somewhere deep within the house. My blood ran cold. This wasn't a prank, not a trick of the mind. This was real. I dropped the journal, my flashlight being shaking uncontrollably. I bolted from the study, my only thought to get out, to escape the horrors that lurked within Blackwood Manor. I ran down the hallway, the shrieks now interspersed with a low, guttural growl that seemed to vibrate through the very floorboards. I reached the top of the stairs, my eyes wide with terror, and started to descend. Halfway down, a shadow detached itself from the deeper darkness at the bottom of the staircase. It was tall, impossibly thin, and seemed to absorb the meager light of my flashlight. I couldn't make out any features, just a gaping void where a face should be. My feet slipped on the dusty steps, and I tumbled down the remaining stairs, landing hard on the cold, unforgiving floor. My flashlight flew from my grasp, clattering into the darkness. I was plunged into absolute blackness, the growling now incredibly close, right above me. I scrambled backward, frantically, searching for my light. My hand brushed against something cold and smooth, and I knew it was the flashlight. I fumbled with it, my trembling fingers struggling to find the switch. When the beam finally flickered to life, it illuminated a horrifying sight. Standing over me, just inches away, was the shadow creature. It was even more terrifying up close. Its limbs were elongated and skeletal, its head tilted at an unnatural angle, and from within the inky blackness of its face, 2 pinpricks of glowing red light stared directly into my soul. A wave of pure, primal fear washed over me, paralyzing me. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. The creature slowly, deliberately, began to raise a long, skeletal arm towards me. Its fingers, tipped with razor-sharp claws, stretched out, reaching for my face. Just as its chilling touch was about to connect, a faint, almost imperceptible sound broke through the horror, the distinct click of a camera shutter. My camera, which had been hanging from my wrist, had swung forward during my fall, and in its accidental movement, had taken a picture of the creature. The red pinprick eyes widened, and the creature let out another ear-splitting shriek, this one filled with what sounded like pain. It recoiled violently, its form wavering as if being torn apart by an unseen force. The growling intensified, but it was no longer directed at me. It was a sound of agony, of something being ripped from its very essence. Taking advantage of its momentary distraction, I scrambled to my feet, my legs burning with renewed adrenaline. I didn't dare look back. I ran, blindly, towards the front door, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The shrieks and growls behind me became more distant, more distorted, as if the very air was struggling to contain them. I burst out of the house, the cool night air a welcome slap to my face. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, parked what felt like miles away from the ominous gates. I fumbled with the keys, my hands still shaking violently, and started the engine. As primeras away, I risked a glance in my rearview mirror. The Blackwood Manor stood dark and silent on the hill, its windows once again like vacant eyes. But for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a flicker of red light in one of the upper windows, like a dying ember. I never told my friends the full extent of what happened that night. I simply said the house was creepy and that I got some good shots. I even showed them a few of the innocuous pictures I'd taken of the dusty rooms. But the true horror, the one etched into my memory, remained a secret. When I finally got home, I collapsed into bed, the images of the creature flashing behind my closed eyelids. It took me days to feel truly safe again, to shake the persistent feeling of being watched. Later, when I finally dared to look at the photos from my camera, I found something that made the blood drain from my face. Amidst the blurry, dark images of the house, there was one clear, terrifying shot. It was the picture the camera had accidentally taken as I fell. It showed the creature, its skeletal arm reaching for me, its void-like face turned towards the lens, and in the very center of its darkness, the two glowing red pinpricks of its eyes burned with an intensity that seemed to transcend the photograph itself. But there was something else, something I hadn't noticed in my terror. Around the edges of the creature's form, almost imperceptible, was a faint, shimmering distortion, like static on an old television screen. And in the background, just barely visible, was a faint, human-like face, contorted in a silent scream. I stared at the image for a long time, a cold dread settling deep in my bones. The creature hadn't just recoiled from the camera's flash. It had recoiled from something else, something about being captured, something about being seen. I deleted the photo immediately. I didn't want any proof, any lingering connection to that place, to that thing. But even without the photograph, the image was burned into my mind. Months passed. The nightmares slowly faded, replaced by restless sleep. I tried to forget, to push Blackwood Manor and its horrors to the darkest corners of my mind. But sometimes, in the dead of night, when the house was silent and the moon hung low in the sky, I would hear it, a faint whisper, like a breath against my ear, echoing the words from that terrifying night. Get out. And sometimes, I would feel it, a sudden, inexplicable chill, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck, as if those glowing red eyes were still watching me, waiting. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that some things, once seen, can never truly be unseen, and some places, once entered, can never truly be left behind. The Blackwood Manor had left its mark on me, a brand of fear that would forever be a part of who I was. And I often wondered, in the quiet moments of the night, if it wasn't just a mark, but a permanent connection, a thin, invisible thread stretching from my soul back to that house on the hill, waiting for the opportune moment to pull me back into its horrifying embrace. I haven't slept soundly since that night, and I doubt I ever will again.